Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are focusing on one of the most critical and honestly seemingly intractable problems in the UK public sector.
You're talking about the recurring crisis of leadership, culture, and accountability within the National Health Service.
Exactly. It's something that has, dominated headlines for decades.
It has. And when you look at the big postmortems of systemic failures, I'm thinking of things like the Francis Inquiry or the Kirkup reviews, they all point to the same thing.
Hmm.
The core problems aren't just, isolated clinical mistakes. They're about a deep cultural rot.
A breakdown in management accountability.
And critically, what they call passivity and silence among staff who just felt they couldn't speak up.
Right. And the dominant influence shaping any organization's culture is always its leadership.
Absolutely. If the culture is broken, you have to look at the people running the show.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive. Analyzing a fascinating study that developed a novel accountability framework for UK healthcare managers.
And what's so unique about it is how it blends recommendations from those very inquiries with established leadership theories.
But then there's a twist, isn't there?
There is. It injects a foundational ethical structure drawn directly from the experience of military-trained managers.
And this framework is built on three really compelling pillars: a sense of service, self-sacrifice, and truth. The SST framework.
Yeah, and to test this, the researchers didn't just stay in the world of theory.
No, they went out and interviewed 8 senior healthcare managers, all of them recognized for being, exemplary.
And all of them had either extensive military backgrounds or were praised for a leadership style that mirrored those military ethics.
So they were used as a sort of benchmark.
Exactly, because military training often cultivates this inherent sense of duty forged in really intense, solution-oriented situations where they have to constantly, anticipate the unexpected.
Which I have to say sounds a lot like managing a constantly under pressure NHS ward.
It's a very apt comparison.
Okay, let's dive into that first pillar then. The exemplary sense of service. What is this, conceptually?
Fundamentally, the sense of service is tied to a manager's internal mental construct. It's their conviction and the initiatives that result from it.
And how does that prevent the passivity and silence we saw in places like Mid-Staffordshire?
It acts as a kind of proactive internal firewall. It's the conviction that drives you to intervene, to do something. It ensures you are never passive, even when the truth is uncomfortable or, might risk your own standing.
So it's about having an internal compass that's strong enough to override any fear.
That's a great way to put it.
The study broke the sense of service down into 3 guiding principles. The first one is discipline.
Right. And discipline here is the bedrock. We're talking about a rigorous, consistent adherence to the established rules, policies, and procedures.
This isn't just about bureaucracy, though.
No, not at all. It's about bringing clarity and predictability into what can be a very chaotic environment. When staff know the rules, and crucially know their manager follows them without exception, it just simplifies everything.
I remember that anecdote about the manager who linked her discipline right back to her childhood. That deep-seated conviction seems to be the key, doesn't it?
It really is. She described herself as the rule follower. She talked about having a very strict upbringing, military cadet training in the Philippines, and even these repetitive math exercises as a child.
Right, the mandatory math exercise.
Yeah, and that strict background didn't just teach her compliance. It created this strong, positive, emotional connection with order and completion.
And that wasn't just some quirky background detail. It translated directly into her professional identity. She called herself the finisher.
Precisely. She makes sure that policy isn't just debated, it's executed. It's seen through to the end. That deep-seated belief translates into initiatives the staff can trust.
Okay, so that's discipline. The second principle that grows out of that is responsibility.
Or what the study calls the acceptance state.
So responsibility in this context is about taking ownership, but also providing comfort. They talk about creating a circle of safety for the team.
Yes, and it's different from just doing your job. It's about accepting the risk that comes with leadership.
How so?
These managers saw their role as being about creating the right conditions for their employees to do their jobs well. They see themselves as the shock absorbers.
So if the team fails,
the manager accepts the responsibility. It not only provides psychological comfort, it prevents that punitive blame culture that causes staff to stay silent in the first place.
So the discipline sets the standard, and this acceptance of responsibility creates a protective bubble around the staff.
Exactly. And inside that bubble, you find the third principle, relational endeavors.
The person-focused relationship.
which means focusing intensely on the human element, being available, being open, kind, and caring.
We hear about open-door policies all the time, but this sounds like it goes further.
It does. They stress that the door should always be open, not just for a scheduled one-to-one. It's about availability being a constant, not an appointment.
It's an intentional investment.
It is, and this is where that military background really seems to drive initiative. The managers talked about a core state of acceptance they learned when they were just thrown into chaotic or even scary situations.
Right, like that classic example of being a lance corporal ordered to set up a facility in the middle of a civil war.
The ultimate in radical uncertainty. And skill is the ability to accept that terrifying reality, the chaos, without freezing up. You still have to execute the job.
And that ability to manage a crisis without showing distress, that must provide a huge sense of security for your team in a hospital setting.
A tremendous sense. When an unexpected ward closure happens, this kind of manager doesn't panic. They just move straight to execution and problem solving, and that calms everyone down.
It's a powerful cognitive transfer, really. Chaos management learned on a battlefield becomes the security blanket in a hospital.
Well said.
So that conviction, that clarity of service is the foundation. But if service is about your internal conviction, how do you amplify that across a whole team?
And that is the perfect lead-in to Pillar 2, self-sacrifice.
Okay.
This is what amplifies that sense of service. It's measured by the manager's ability to influence their workforce. The study cleverly used Cialdini's 6 classes of influence as a framework here.
Reciprocity, consistency, authority, liking, all those.
Exactly. To understand how these managers sacrifice their own comfort or status to lead effectively.
You know, self-sacrifice sounds so intense, but the most acknowledged sacrifice was surprisingly relational. It was the sacrifice to be liked.
Yes, influenced by charisma and likeness. And this is a profound sacrifice, I think.
Why do you say that?
Well, most high-level executives assume distance equals respect, right? These managers actively rejected that idea. They believed admiration and likeness were crucial.
So they foster a genuinely friendly approach to work.
They do. They spend the emotional labor to make sure staff feel valued, which encourages the staff to reciprocate that effort and commitment. It becomes a transaction. I invest in you, you invest in the mission.
But wait, doesn't trying to be liked risk blurring professional lines? You know, especially when you have to make a tough disciplinary call. It's management 101 that you shouldn't be your employee's friend.
And that's the tension. But they manage it by making sure the likeness is rooted in respect for their work, not just being superficially pleasant.
I see.
They sacrifice the easy path of just being emotionally detached. It takes a lot more energy to lead with warmth than with cold distance. And the next finding shows they sacrifice distance in other ways, too.
Right, which brings us to the principle of scarcity. Traditionally, influence by scarcity is based on that distance or status.
The C-suite behind a locked door, making their time rare and therefore valuable.
Did these managers leverage that?
The complete opposite. This was actively reversed. Instead of maintaining that executive distance, they focused intensely on visibility, availability, and openness.
They sacrificed the traditional executive prerogative of being hard to reach.
Precisely. And they do it to build trust. They make themselves accessible so that staff will come to them with issues, personal or professional, before they spiral out of control.
So they use visibility to build attachment and trust instead of using distance to build awe and respect.
You've got it. And that visibility prevents small problems from becoming those massive public scandals that have plagued the NHS. If staff know they can walk up to the person with the power and tell them a difficult truth, the whole organization is safer.
Okay, so if they reverse scarcity and they prioritize being liked, what happens to traditional authority? Influence by title and authority was the least acknowledged class, wasn't it?
It was, yes. The least acknowledged, but its role was very nuanced and absolutely necessary.
How so? They didn't use their title to demand obedience.
No, they used it for order, escalation, and security.
Can you break that down? What does that look like in practice?
Okay, so imagine a frontline nurse sees a catastrophic staffing shortage that is putting patients at immediate risk.
Right.
In a culture of passivity, that nurse might worry that if they raise the issue, they'll be blamed or even dismissed. In the SST framework, the manager uses their title, their authority, to shield that nurse. The nurse escalates the problem to the manager.
And the manager uses their title to demand resources and action from upper management.
Exactly. The title becomes a tool for security. It allows team members to escalate problems without taking on more risk or responsibility than their role demands.
That makes perfect sense. It's power used to shield, not to dominate.
Yes. And we also saw consistent use of reciprocity. Managers would do everything in their power to empower and protect their staff, especially during things like organizational cuts.
And if a manager fights for you, you feel a powerful reciprocal obligation to commit to them.
It's a huge motivator. And finally, consistency ties it all together. Their behavior is predictable. Their decisions, whether friendly or strict, are never seen as arbitrary, and that maintains a high level of trust.
This is a deeply human-centric model of management. It's rooted in active presence rather than passive control.
It is.
Let's shift now to the final pillar, the sense of truth. This is all about maintaining an honest, innovative, and reflective work environment.
And truth is really the oxygen for this entire model. It's expressed through proactive honesty and transparency.
And the managers believed transparency was the only way to gain genuine respect.
Respect, and more importantly, to encourage honest suggestions and feedback from every level of the organization.
This really gets at that core problem of information asymmetry in big organizations. Why is the speed of communication so important here?
It's all about mitigating insecurity. When high-level decisions are being made, a merger, a funding cut, the silence creates a vacuum,
Which is immediately filled by the rumor mill.
which breeds distrust and anxiety. One manager said they communicate quickly, even if the information is incomplete. They say, as soon as a decision has been made, we'll let you know what we know.
That respects the staff's intelligence. It minimizes the window for destructive speculation.
And that speed, rooted in respect, fosters the second component, team-level reflection and safety. That's your psychological safety net.
Crucial.
Absolutely. The managers actively set this tone. They show they can handle difficult truths. They encourage the direct expression of discontent and disagreement.
I love that quote from the study. If you're upset with me, just tell me.
It's more than just an invitation, isn't it? It's a mandate. They establish a relationship where conflict, when it's managed professionally, is seen as productive.
This is the mechanism that prevents that historical passivity.
It is. Staff aren't forced into silence. They're encouraged to voice their concerns directly inside that circle of safety.
And if you have that safety, you can finally have mediating innovation.
Because innovation is impossible if you don't have the safety to fail. These managers see themselves not as the source of all ideas, but as mediators.
So if a junior team member brings up an idea that sounds, I don't know, risky or even a bit ridiculous,
They don't immediately shut it down. They mediate. They give the staff time to, and I'm quoting here, explore an idea and try to see why it would work and why it wouldn't work.
they help the team stress test it.
Yes, they foster creativity by empowering the person with the idea rather than just imposing the right solution from the top down.
Wow. This has been an incredibly detailed breakdown.
Right.
So what does this all mean when we connect the dots back to the UK healthcare challenge?
Well, what really stands out to me is the deep integration of it all. This exemplary leadership relies on a fundamental, proactive sense of service,
Rooted in discipline, relational endeavors, and that acceptance of responsibility.
which is then amplified by self-sacrifice, especially that intentional sacrifice of executive distance and the hard work of being liked and visible.
And it's all anchored by the sense of truth.
That maintains the psychological safety and transparency. It's the whole package.
So this study gives us a concrete, theoretically sound accountability framework, the SST model, which is now being recommended for simulated scenario training for the UK healthcare workforce.
The goal really is transformative, to move past just regulating compliance and to actively start cultivating these deep, inherent senses in managers.
And the fact that this success is so clearly linked to real-world experiences, often military ones, suggests that this kind of managerial excellence isn't some abstract, innate quality.
No, it's a set of transferable, trainable competencies.
It's powerful evidence that you can train people out of passivity and into ownership. But here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over.
Okay?
Given that the success of these managers is so rooted in inherent attributes cultivated over decades of intense, sometimes life or death experience, what are the most significant practical challenges in implementing a short-term training program that's meant to instill these deep fundamental senses of service, sacrifice, and truth?
That really is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Can you actually replicate conviction in a classroom? It requires a monumental shift in how we even approach management education.
A fascinating challenge indeed. Thanks for diving in with us today.